Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Only Run Very Noob, bringing you Guardian gameplay on the Telestar client. Today I wanted to do something a little different. I know yesterday I posted a Betsy video. I'm pretty excited about Betsy, but I wanted to show you guys the matchup from the Bravos side and how I think I would kind of play against them. I don't have a Betsy tab yet for my matchups. I just clicked Bravo and kind of expect it to be good. The cards that are out are Chokeslam, Warmonger's Diplomacy, Boulder Drop, and Spinal Crush. I think that's probably fine. Debilitate's probably better than Chokeslam. Chokeslam might be good though because they do like Money Where Your Mouth Is, but they could always Money Where Your Mouth Is their hammer. And their hero ability gives like a point, but Debilitate gives -1 or -2 in that instance, where Chokeslam would only give -1. Going second with this hand, looking to definitely block if they attack me. If I block with one card, it's probably the Cranial Crush. If I block with two, it's probably the Cranial Crush and Macho Grande. If I'm forced to block with three, I probably block with all of my blues and keep Command and Conquer, although keeping Terra Sunder would also be reasonable. We have almost the same loadouts. They have Tech Plating, we have Tunic. Looks like they're deciding how to pitch for their Tech Plating activation, and then I would expect like a hammer for 6 after this. They pitched Talk a Big Game, which doesn't cost 3, so I guess the hammer will only be for 4. I don't want to give them any free points though, and I don't think fatigue will really be an issue. So I'm just gonna block with Macho Grande and Cranial Crush, keeping both of the threats. We draw 2 blues, so we're just going to Terra Sunder them. They could give us armor if they want. They could have a defense reaction and arsenal if they want. But I'd rather save the Command and Conquer and arsenal for when our Tunic hits 3 and then we hit like a pummel. Or a future turn where we can like block 9 and still send Command and Conquer back. Because if we end up Command and Conquering them this turn, we're just not really using our hand efficiently. We'd like arsenal a Terra Sunder and then kind of IP ourselves. And as it turns out, it looks like we're getting a whole bunch of armor here, which would be very good. Ooh, they block with Civic Steps, which also makes our Command and Conquer and Arsenal very good, because now we can keep 2 blues and like Command and Conquer them into hammer for 6 next turn. Draw kind of an interesting hand. Definitely think I'm going to end up just blocking 3, playing Command and Conquer, and then hammering for 6, and arsenaling the Zealous Belting. And the card I'm going to block with is probably Disable, because the Starstruck plus the Unmovable is 5 resources, which still gives us enough to Command and Conquer into the hammer, and then pitches the Starstruck as a threat for later, if that ever comes up. And it looks like we won't even really be given an option to block with more than 1 card, because they're playing a Wager card that is going to have Overpower. And while we could block with like Starstruck and pitch into our blue Unmovable from hand, that doesn't really let us do anything. And I think I'm totally fine with taking 5 and giving them a Might here. Because we're coming in for 12 and a Arsenal Disruption effect. We have a Quicken, always very nice. I guess they were saving their crown for the Command and Conquer, but had they used crown last turn, our turn here would have been a lot worse. We wouldn't have. I guess we would have probably just like Zealous Belting them. But Command and Conquer into Hammer is a lot better than that, because it sort of forces them to use their crown or give us a bunch of cards. And Presumably they want a bigger hand with their might token, so that they're not just like hammering for 5 or for 7 with it. They're actually like throwing a big wagered attack. And as we see, they did want to keep at least 3 of their cards so they could bet big with wager and pay into Betsy. We can only block with 1 card. We don't want to give them a bunch of armor. We would really only be able to cover it if we blocked with our Tunic, thanks to the Might token, taking this from 9 to 10. So we just give them their 7 damage, and we are looking to Zealous Belting into Debilitate. And hopefully make them pay a lot of life. If they want to have a big turn with all these tokens. They go to block with Civic Steps, but undo it. I think Civic Steps block here would be fine, though. Because with only 2 cards behind, it'd be very hard for us to attack twice. We would need, like... I guess if we had another Command and Conquer, it might be kind of dangerous, because we could Tunic into Command and Conquer into Hammer, so maybe that's what he's afraid of. With 1 floating and Tunic up, it actually is a little scarier to use Civic Steps. And with 2 cards behind, he might be afraid of Enlightened Strike, draw a card as well. Because with 1 floating and Tunic counter, even if the Enlightened Strike draw card drew a red, we would still be able to swing our hammer afterwards. But they just take the damage, and we're just going to follow up with a Debilitate. It might be slightly more efficient to swing hammer for 6 and Arsenal to Debilitate, but I just kind of like to do as much as I can each turn cycle. And they also have like all those tokens that are going to pop next turn, so I'd like to limit the power of their hand by having an attack that isn't as enticing to take. Like they could just take 6 from Anothos and go down to 23 and then send like a huge hand back. But the Debilitate might actually incentivize them to not do that. And it does. They actually end up blocking 8 here. The 3 cards they show us aren't very aggressive though, so maybe they just couldn't do too much. Because they certainly could have just unmovable for 5 and take 3 to keep like a 3-card hand instead of a 2-card hand. Or a 2-card plus Arsenal hand instead of a 1-card plus Arsenal hand. And they CNC us for 7. Our hand is a little ugly here. Luckily the Command and Conquer is just 7 damage. It's not going to hit. But it does kind of suck we can't sink below it, because we'd really like to just use sink below to get some defensive value. Throw the Command and Conquer off Starstruck and Arsenal Crippling Crush, having a Tunic counter. But I think now I actually have to block with Crippling Crush, looking to throw Command and Conquer off Starstruck and then Arsenal sink below. But they're not going to have an Arsenal either, so do I really want to Command and Conquer? I could probably just block with my 2 red attacks. Block 6, take 1, use Tunic counter and Starstruck to hammer for 4 and Arsenal sink below. Which seems like a fairly inefficient use of Tunic counter. But yeah, maybe I am just supposed to throw Command and Conquer and save Tunic counter, but protecting my life total isn't terrible. But using Tunic counter just to kind of turn this Starstruck into a blue isn't the best. But we are blocking with 2 attacks that we kind of like to use Tunic counter for. Tunic for CNC Pummel and Tunic for Crippling Crush. Some of our best Tunic plays for sure that we're getting rid of by blocking. Here we have a hand where we're probably going to want to block with our defense reactions and then Command and Conquer them in Arsenal Crippling Crush. But we see that they want to throw a Wage Vigor at us, and we can really punish this line because he's probably going to give it Overpower. We can Fate Foreseen for 4 and Sink Below for 4, covering this up for 8. If the Fate Foreseen shows a blue on top, we can Sink Below our Command and Conquer into the blue and just throw Crippling Crush off the Vigor, which is what we're going to look to do here. We see the red that actually we won't want to bottom here because now we can sink below the Crippling Crush to the bottom and use the Vigor token to pummel Command and Conquer, which is just like fantastic. Alright, so this might be a little jarring. You're probably going to see this cut directly to here. My wife just came home from the gym, so I just cut that part out for you guys. But yeah, back to the game. We don't see a blue on top, but we see potentially the best red we could see there, because we get to just use this Vigor token to Command and Conquer, pummel a Command and Conquer, which is like incredibly punishing for our opponent. Definitely one of the downsides of Wager is that it's not like when you dominate an attack with Bravo and they have a defense reaction for it. Yeah, it sucks because you paid 2 to dominate, but it's not like they get to crush you instead. With Wager, when you have the blocks or defense reactions to like cover it up, they actually don't just lose the value they would gain, they lose the value they would gain and have to give it to their opponent. So it's definitely a huge downside. They just block 6, but we have the pummel, so we get to really punish them here. They give us a Quicken token, but we draw a Zealous Belting hand, so the Quicken's not going to be too punishing for them. I am just going to take the 4 damage though, because I would rather have pummel and arsenal than block 2 with it. That's probably something that that's sort of a play most of us would make, right? Too bad our tunic's not at 3, because then we could pummel this Zealous Belting into hammer, which would be like very nice. Oh, it looks like they coded Wage Gold. It actually blocks 2 now. That's good for when I go back to testing Betsy. I don't have to just never block with the card because it used to block 1. And they want to keep their 4 cards. It looks like maybe they have a defense reaction. But yeah, it looks like they want to keep their 4 cards and just take a bunch of damage. Oh my gosh. We draw another Zealous Belting hand, which is very good because we have pummel and arsenal and tunic up. So next turn we're going to be able to pummel our Zealous Belting and swing an Oathos for 6. So what is that, 15 value plus a discard? Good old 18 value, 4 cards. Not bad at all. They pitch into their gold. I don't think they saw the top of their deck, so I hope they get something cool. Oh, it looks like they were looking for a blue. They pitched 2 Money Where Your Mouth Is into a Wage Might. And I would imagine this Wage Might's just coming in for 7. They're probably not trying to wager here. So we're just going to block 3, take 4, and then take our Zealous Belting pummel line. I think with Wager, sometimes you're just going to have to, clench your cheeks and hope that they don't want to block it and just wager, because here we definitely only wanted to block with 1 card. I guess we could have given them equipment in 1 card if we really wanted the Might token, but I don't even think the Might token would be worth it for us to give up a bunch of armor and give them a Quicken token or get rid of our crown. So Wager is going to definitely be a very skill testing keyword ability to use, because I think if he wagers there, he just gets like a free Might token. Something like Vigor or Gold, I think, might be more risky to give your opponent, but like a Might token, it's almost like if you really want the Might token, I guess you can have it. It's just +1 value. So we do our Zealous Belting pummel line. We get them down to 3. They only have 1 card left. They attack us for 4. And I think I am just going to block 3 here. We could not block 3 and then like E-Strike, go again, and then hammer for 6. But I'd rather just E-Strike for 7 and Arsenal to Rouse. And if we do that, we can just block with one of the cards that we weren't going to use anyway. Because E-Strike for 7 is only 2 less than E-Strike, go again, and hammer for 4. And we got 3 from blocking, so 3 is bigger than 2. They show us a red bigger than big, which is the aura that gives something +5 in wager. And then on this turn, they just set up, and we arsenal the Rousing Ancients, so I'm pretty sure we get to take this game here. They have no armor, and we're going Rousing Ancients into Debilitate. And they have 2/2 blocks in hand too, so I think they realize at this point, even if we're just swinging the hammer afterwards, that we get to take the game. So yeah, not the most competitive game, but I wouldn't expect it to be. On my side, I'm playing a very tuned Bravo list that some might argue is sort of a meta deck, like it's like a top 3, top 4 deck in the meta. And they're playing a brand new hero that doesn't even have all their cards spoiled, and even with the cards they have, is probably not tuned at all, as we've only had like 3 or 4 days to play Betsy on Talishar. But after bringing you a Betsy game yesterday, I wanted to show you guys I'm still dedicated to Bravo, and that if the Betsy deck I played looked like it would be scary and you were worried about Bravo, you shouldn't be. Bravo is a very strong deck. Even into Betsy, you have some ways to really, really punish the wager mechanic. We have a bunch of armor, we have defense reactions, and I don't think they can fatigue us because we have attacks that attack for like 10 and 11, and they don't really have that. So thanks for joining me. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. Appreciate every one of your views, and I hope you have a lovely day. See you next time.